The Final Mandate, a bold and beautiful tragedy. In the relentless sun of Los Angeles, where empires are built on silk and secrets, the lives of the Forrester, Logan, and Spencer clans are a tapestry woven with threads of passion, ambition, and perpetual drama. Their world is one of high-stakes fashion shows and even higher-stakes boardroom battles, a glamorous facade behind which love and loyalty are commodities, traded and betrayed with breathtaking frequency. At the center of this whirlwind, Liam Spencer had long been a man pulled in 1,000 directions, his heart a battleground for competing dynasties. But a new, insidious conflict was beginning, not in a boardroom or a bedroom, but within the delicate architecture of his own mind. A storm within, the unspoken fear. It began with whispers of pain, a flicker of discord in the symphony of his senses. The headaches arrived as mere flickers at first, ghost-like sparks dancing behind Liam Spencer's eyes when the relentless stress of deadlines and the emotional toll of custody exchanges grew too sharp. He dismissed them as the cost of a complicated life, the price of juggling a career at Spencer Publications with the delicate co-parenting of his beloved daughter, Beth. He was a Spencer, after all, and Spencers endured. But within weeks, the whispers became a roar. The flickers detonated into savage migraines that laid siege to his consciousness. The pain was a physical entity, a cruel tormentor that could no longer be hidden behind a forced smile or a cup of strong coffee. A tremor took root in his hands, a subtle but persistent betrayal by his own body. His vision, once sharp and clear, began to blur around the edges of Beth's radiant smile, a cruel distortion of the one image he cherished most. The man who had navigated the treacherous waters of his family's legacy was now lost in a fog of his own making, unable to anchor himself against the rising tide of his illness. The sterile white walls of University Hospital became a new, unwelcome backdrop to his life. A battery of tests, MRIs, CT scans, neurological exams, were conducted, each procedure a silent, terrifying countdown. In the fragile hush of a consultation room, surrounded by the scent of antiseptic and unspoken dread, the verdict was delivered. Hope Logan, the enduring love of his life, tried to swallow her sobs, her hand a desperate anchor on his arm. But Liam wasn't listening to her. He watched the oncologist's lips move, every clinical syllable, malignant, inoperable, palliative, translating into the same brutal, two-word mandate: prepare.
Prepare.
The diagnosis was a death sentence, elegantly phrased but utterly final. A malignant glioblastoma, a predator nestled deep in the right temporal lobe. Its insidious tentacles were woven so intimately with vital brain tissue that even the finest neurosurgeons in the world, men and women who performed miracles with a scalpel, had confessed defeat. Surgery was impossible. Radiation was merely a delaying tactic, a way to buy time that could be measured in weeks, not years. The most optimistic prognosis granted him months. The storm within had a name, and it was unstoppable. A marriage of necessity, forging a shield. The knowledge of his impending death didn't send Liam into a spiral of despair. Instead, it ignited a fierce, desperate clarity. His purpose, once scattered across love triangles and corporate rivalries, now coalesced into a single, burning focus: his daughter, Beth. Preparation for Liam meant erasing every trace of uncertainty from her future. He spent sleepless nights hunched over his laptop, the blue light illuminating a face etched with a new, grim maturity. He drafted spreadsheets of expenses, created impenetrable trusts, and mapped out contingencies for every milestone he was now condemned to miss: college tuition, health insurance, the wedding he would never attend, the grandchildren he would never hold. Yet, as he stared at the cold, sterile numbers on the screen, he knew it wasn't enough. The warmth of Beth's bedtime stories, the innocent weight of her head on his shoulder, these were the things that mattered, the things a trust fund could never replace. He needed to provide not just for her financial security, but for her emotional stability. He needed to build a shield around her, one that would stand firm long after he was gone. And so, he sought something equally elemental, a plan as old as time itself: a marriage contract. He would bind Hope to a future of stability, a future beyond the grief that was destined to consume her. For this monumental task, he turned to the one man he knew possessed the requisite integrity and strength, Carter Walton. A stalwart friend, a brilliant lawyer, and the legal guardian of the Forrester family's countless fortunes, Carter possessed the moral steel Liam admired and the financial acumen necessary to shield Beth from the inevitable infighting of their powerful and often predatory families. He laid out the plan to Hope, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. He spoke not of love, but of logic. He spoke of Beth, of her future, of the legacy he needed to secure. Hope resisted at first, her heart still tethered to the memories of vows they had spoken under a Monte Carlo sun, a lifetime of love and loss flashing before her eyes. But as she looked at Liam, at the dark circles that had become permanent fixtures beneath his eyes and the unyielding, desperate logic in his plea, her opposition crumbled. She agreed, not from passion, but from a love so fierce it was willing to sacrifice personal longing for her child's tomorrow. She would marry Carter Walton. Carter, shocked yet deeply honored by the immense trust Liam placed in him, accepted the solemn role. He understood this was not a union of romance, but a sacred pact. His signature on a marriage license would be the anchor for Beth's life when the storm finally hit. The wedding was a private, somber affair on the Forrester terrace. As the sun set over the Pacific, casting long, mournful shadows, Hope and Carter exchanged vows. Ridge and Brooke stood as uneasy witnesses, their faces a mixture of confusion and concern. Bill Spencer arrived late, his usual bravado replaced by a raw, warring mixture of rage and heartbreak. He was furious, realizing his son had arranged this profound safeguard without his counsel, a move that effectively cut the Spencer dynasty out of his granddaughter's future. His protests, however, collapsed against the sight of Liam's faltering strength. The man who was orchestrating his own legacy had to sit down, exhausted, before the ink was even dry on the certificate. That night, Liam's final act of preparation began. With Carter's steady guidance, he rewrote his will. He appointed Hope as Beth's primary guardian and the executor of his estate. In a move that acknowledged the complex tapestry of his life, he named Steffi, his other great love, as the alternate guardian in the event of a catastrophe. Together, Liam and Carter constructed layers of protection so labyrinthine, a fortress of legal clauses and fiduciary frameworks, that even the most ambitious opportunist could not pry Beth's inheritance loose. The war at the bedside, a family divided. For a fleeting fortnight, a fragile peace held. Liam's medication softened the pain enough for family board game evenings, for whispered counsel with his brother, Wyatt, about corporate succession. He was a man living on borrowed time, and he savored every precious second. Then, without warning, the storm broke with terrifying force. A seizure struck. One moment, Beth was tracing imaginary constellations on her father's arm. The next, his body jolted violently, a teacup shattering on the floor, his eyes rolling white. The chaos that followed was a blur of paramedics, sirens, and the frantic, disbelieving cries of his family. At the hospital, the chaos chorus of beeping monitors confirmed their worst fears. The tumor had hemorrhaged, accelerating his decline. A barrage of steroids and anticonvulsants subdued the immediate threat but, in doing so, unveiled a new, crueler truth. Liam's cognitive function would now erode in irregular waves, his memories and personality fracturing until breath itself became a final, desperate negotiation with the cancer. The Spencer and Logan clans converged at Liam's bedside, a tense gathering of powerful families, each faction carrying their own brand of love and their own hidden agenda. The family war, which had paused in reverent dread, now erupted. Bill, a man used to buying his way to any solution, demanded experimental trials overseas, refusing to accept defeat. Ridge, ever the protector of his own, insisted on moving Liam to the sanctuary of the Forrester guest house. Steffi, her heart breaking for the man she had once loved and for the daughter they shared, pleaded for the creation of shared parental memories to bolster Beth's resilience against the coming loss. And Brooke, sensing a seismic shift in power, began a quiet campaign for influence, seeking amendments to the will that would grant her advisory power over Hope's financial decisions, keeping Beth firmly within the Logan orbit. Amid the cacophony, Carter became the arbiter. His marriage to Hope, once a symbolic shield, was now a legal bulwark. He had the authority to interpret and execute Liam's directives, and he did so with unwavering resolve. He upheld every clause, blocking Brooke's petitions and calmly negotiating with a raging bill, channeling Spencer corporate resources toward palliative innovations rather than the risky and proven surgeries Liam had explicitly declined. Through it all, Hope was a beacon of exhausted, resolute strength. She navigated the widening rifts between the families, her focus solely on her husband and child. She read bedtime stories in the sterile quiet of the ICU, her voice a steady comfort against the beeping of the machines. She deflected media leaks about Liam's condition as paparazzi drones, like vultures, hovered near the hospital windows, hungry for images of the Spencer heir fading away. The public spectacle was relentless. Spencer Publications' stock fluctuated with each unsubstantiated rumor, prompting Wyatt to assume interim leadership under the watchful eye of a nervous board. The private tragedy had become a public circus, and the family infighting only grew more vicious. The legal battle lines were drawn when Bill and Brooke, united in their desire for control, hired Justin Barber to challenge the guardianship structure. In an emergency court hearing, Barber argued that Hope's recent marriage, a product of grief and duress, compromised her emotional capacity to act solely in Beth's best interest. But Carter was prepared. He countered with meticulous documentation, psychiatric evaluations affirming Hope's stability, fiduciary frameworks naming neutral third-party auditors, and, most damningly, letters Liam had recorded after his diagnosis, his voice weak but his intent clear, expressing his unequivocal trust in Hope's judgment. The judge ruled in favor of the original will, praising its foresight. The legal victory was absolute. It was also hollow. As the gavel fell, Liam suffered a second, more devastating hemorrhage. It paralyzed his left side and, cruelly, robbed him of coherent speech. The victory in the courtroom was a bitter pill to swallow as they watched the man they all loved slip further away. The machines now breathed for him, and the family war finally paused, replaced by a reverent, unified dread. A promise sealed in ash, the final legacy. The final days were a series of heart-wrenching vignettes. Hope, her own grief a heavy cloak, slid the simple wedding band Liam had given her years ago onto his inert finger. She whispered to him, her voice thick with tears, that their love transcended contracts, and that Beth would know him through stories, through habits, and through the way the Malibu ocean air would always smell of courage. Carter stood sentinel outside, a quiet guardian protecting their last moments from the prying eyes of the world. Wyatt brought a tearful Beth to the bedside. She placed a crayon drawing of their family, a stick-figure testament to a love now fractured by tragedy, in Liam's limp hand and told him she loved him to the rainbow and back. In the silent room, a single, sharp spike on the electroencephalogram answered where words could not. As the July heat blistered Los Angeles, Liam's body surrendered in increments. His kidneys faltered, his lungs filled, his heartbeat flickered under the heavy blanket of sedatives. Honoring his advanced directive, a tearful Hope authorized comfort care. The families, their battles silenced by the profound finality of the moment, gathered around him. Bill, his pride scalded by tears, held his son's feet and recounted stories of childhood fishing trips. Brooke stroked Hope's hair, her own grief momentarily silencing her ambition. Steffi, her voice trembling, sang an old lullaby, a melody from a happier time. Carter, his voice a steady presence in the room, read the will aloud, so Liam could hear the strength of the words that were sealing his daughter's destiny. When the final monitor flatlined, a hush greater than any boardroom silence fell. Liam Spencer was gone. In the aftermath, the funereal logistics unfolded with ruthless efficiency. Press statements were drafted, memorial venues secured, and the trust funds Liam had so painstakingly arranged were activated at midnight. Yet the legal aftershock erupted within 24 hours. The tabloids, fed by anonymous sources, published excerpts of the will, speculating that Carter's new marital status positioned him to siphon Spencer capital. Bill's grief curdled into suspicion. Brooke reignited her crusade for what she saw as her family's rightful supremacy. Even Steffi, torn between loyalty to her children's father and her own family, considered contesting the alternate guardianship clause. The war had resumed. Hope, submerged in mourning, relied on Carter's latticework of protections to hold the chaos at bay. The months that followed were a blur of depositions, restraining orders, and emergency meetings with forensic accountants. Through it all, Hope was sustained by the innocent, heartbreaking questions from her daughter. "Does heaven have beaches like Malibu, Mommy?" Beth would ask each night. "Can Daddy still hear my lullabies?" Finally, on one crisp autumn dawn, the last lawsuit dissolved under the weight of a judicial gavel. The battles were over. Hope was free. She stood on the bluff overlooking the Pacific, the same bluff where Liam had once taught Beth to spot dolphins and scattered his ashes into the wind. Carter stood beside her, his hand a steady presence on her shoulder. As the wind carried the ash and the confetti of old petitions alike into the vast, indifferent ocean, they sealed not only Liam's final wishes, but the indomitable resilience of a family reforged in the furnace of impending loss. They returned home to a living room glowing with morning light and found Beth, oblivious to the wars waged in her name, building a castle from the very trust documents that had caused so much pain. Her giggles, pure and untainted, echoed through the quiet house, the sound of the promise Liam had fought and died to secure. It was a future stable enough for innocence to thrive, even under the shadow of an inoperable tumor and the seismic grief it had unleashed. The tangled web of deceit had been torn apart, but in its place, a legacy of a father's fierce, unwavering love remained. Thanks for watching this videos. Please hit the subscribe button for more updated news.